Let me present to you the valley of Roșia Montana. This is where you can see what we saved.
This is a UNESCO protected area of Romania's Transylvania.
It would be a lunar landscape, it would be an industrial mining site.
The Romanian government has beaten a multinational corporation from trying to mine these mountains for gold using a potentially deadly chemical.
It would have been another deserted area, another apocalyptic landscape.
In this era of conservation and climate change, how are foreign investors trying to sue governments over their climate policies?
Se necesitaba era la tierra del futuro, teníamos las esperanzas puestas ahí.
And how are communities fighting back? To find out, we visit two countries on opposite sides of the world in this episode of Transforming Business. We begin in the La Guajira region of northern Colombia. It's home to the El Cerrajón open-pit coal mine, one of the largest in the world. For many years, the mine has been surrounded in controversy over accusations by indigenous people of human and environmental abuses. These include air, water and noise pollution. It's owned by Glencore, a Swiss multinational mining company. Its coal is exported globally, including to Europe and the USA. Carbon dioxide from coal accounts for about 40% of greenhouse gas emissions from fossil fuels. Underground in this region, there are coal reserves, economically important to Glencore.
Se necesitaba era la tierra del futuro, teníamos las esperanzas puestas ahí.
These farmers say they were forcibly moved from here by Colombian police. They point out to this water source, the Bruno River, which flows through Cerrajón's mining concession. It's a vein of water in a region hit by years of extreme drought and a lifeline for locals. But it's in jeopardy.
El asunto es que mientras que la explotación carbonífera daña esos afluentes hídricos, para el desarrollo de la explotación carbonífera, Cerrejón también necesita el agua.
The mine gulps down over 33 million litres of water per day. After community pressure in 2017, the Colombian Constitutional Court moved to protect the Bruno River and indigenous communities who rely on it. It did this after Glencore partially changed the course of the river to extract more coal. Glencore responded to the Constitutional Court decision by kicking off legal proceedings to sue Colombia for an undisclosed amount of money.
Es una ironía que la Glencore decida demandar al Estado colombiano por la explotación del arroyo Bruno, cuando lo que ha hecho la Glencore es vulnerar de manera sistemática los derechos fundamentales de las comunidades y de los territorios.
In response, Glencore says it supports rigorous social and environmental practices, and it has other claims against the Colombian state.
All this money that belongs to the states but ultimately belongs to the taxpayer in the states should be injected in climate policies and in environmental protection measures and other measures of the kind, rather than going into the pockets of fossil fuel industry and investors of the like.
Colombia's Environment Minister, after this interview with us, refused to answer questions on the matter, citing potential legal issues. In a statement to us, Glencore said, "Our preference is to resolve issues of dispute through constructive engagement with host governments. Where an amicable settlement cannot be achieved, we may initiate a claim via a legal route that utilises arbitration processes." When asked about how much it's seeking in compensation, its answer, no comment. This is how Glencore is trying to sue the Colombian government. ISDS stands for Investor State Dispute Settlements. It's a legal framework that allows foreign investors to sue governments in which they've invested money or assets if they believe their interests have been adversely affected.
The rationale for ISDS in the first place is that it promotes foreign investment, because investors are being encouraged to invest in a jurisdiction where often there are rule of law concerns, or where the local laws are insufficient to provide real protection to investors.
Investors derive these economic rights from international investment agreements signed by states over the last 50 years. In the case of Glencore versus Colombia, it's using the Colombia-Switzerland bilateral investment treaty. As the planet continues to heat up because of the burning of fossil fuels, policymakers are upping their game to curb emissions and protect the environment. This is leading to a trimming back of fossil fuels. According to a report from the International Institute for Sustainable Development, the fossil fuel industry is the most litigious in the ISDS system. The second most is the mining sector.
ISDS has been really heavily weaponized and manipulated by corporations who are holding onto their profits and their activities in complete disregard of the broader issues.
ISDS cases are usually quite secretive and operate outside of domestic courts in arbitration. The investor appoints an arbitrator, the state appoints an arbitrator, and both can agree on a third independent arbitrator who usually acts as president or chair of proceedings.
And you can understand from an investor's perspective that if you're, to take the sort of the classic example, if your cement factory has been expropriated by the local government, do you really want to have that dispute resolved in the local courts?
According to Global ISDS Tracker, the number of fossil fuel cases has increased steadily in the last 3 decades. The International Institute for Sustainable Development says fossil fuel cases also have a nearly 5 times higher average amount of compensation awarded, in the region of $600 million. An article published in the journal Science suggests that globally ISDS claims from fossil fuel investors could amount to over $340 billion. And there have been multiple reports from a host of international bodies criticising the impact of ISDS on green policy. The former UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and the Environment, David Boyd, said fossil fuel and mining cases act as a deterrent for governments and create regulatory chill.
And that's been a topic that policymakers and arbitrators and counsel have been grappling with for a while.
In 2018, according to a UN report, New Zealand withdrew from cancelling existing offshore oil permits because of fears of ISDS. When France was allegedly threatened by an ISDS lawsuit from a Canadian multinational, green group Friends of the Earth says that the country diluted its plans for a fossil fuel extraction phase-out by 2040. And in Denmark, it's reported that expensive ISDS claims have meant it's chosen 2050 rather than an earlier date for phasing out oil and gas production. But there have been some interesting developments in at least one ISDS case, and we've travelled to Romania to hear more.
Let me present to you the Valley of Roșia Montana. This is where you can see what we saved.
This is a UNESCO protected area of Transylvania called Roșia Montana.
It would be an industrial mining site. It would be of gigantic proportion. Just imagine trucks that are 15, 20 tons heavy going around, and just imagine, tons of explosive per day.
The Romanian government, driven by local community efforts, has beaten a multinational corporation in an ISDS case worth $4.4 billion. The Canadian company Gabriel Resources wanted to excavate these mountains to build one of the biggest gold mines in Europe. In this valley, it wanted to build a long reservoir to collect over 200 tons of wastewater laced with cyanide, a deadly chemical used to extract gold from rocks. It could have looked something like this: acid mine drainage from a local copper mine. And the town of Roșia Montana would have looked totally different.
It would have been another deserted area, another apocalyptic landscape.
Roșia Montana is a very old gold mining region. It dates to before the Romans. You'll find extensive underground Roman mine galleries about 7 kilometres long. People are proud of their mining heritage. During communism, this region was mined by the Romanian government, here in this open-pit gold mine. Gabriel Resources won mining rights in the region in 1999. Major national protests because of community mobilisation stalled the project and drew international attention. We meet locals who were the backbone of this opposition. Devian Petri Shore. He tells us how for years he was heartbroken and destroyed morally, living in constant fear that he would be thrown out of his home. Now people are more hopeful.
They were able to show to the court that they are a sovereign state and that they can take decisions on whether they want to approve a project or not, regardless of the corporate grip and pressure that Gabriel Resources put on them.
Gabriel Resources is now trying to nullify the costs of the case it needs to pay the Romanian government, and it's issued notification of a potential second ISDS action. When we repeatedly asked them for a statement, they never responded.
Nowadays, states realize that they can no longer be held hostages by corporations who might want to use that mechanism to threaten them to not implement, if they were to implement climate or environmental policies.
Back in Colombia, communities continue to take a stand against coal mining in their region.
Eso era lo que uno comía, comida del monte.
Their futures are uncertain, with ISDS cases hanging in the balance.
Lo que el pueblo guajiro desea es que el arroyo Bruno se proteja, esa fuente hídrica sea conservada y que el agua está por encima del carbón.
They're looking to Romania as an example of hope, an example of change in favour of the planet. What do you think of ISDS cases? Let us know in the comments below. And if you liked this episode, please check out the Transforming Business playlist for videos on topics just like this one.